Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. I'm going to be doing this call on my speakerphone since my headphones conked out. So I apologize if the audio isn't terrific, but we will get through it, okay? So first thing is a 5Q tape breakdown last week. We have to review numbers, graphs, charts with clients. Here's how you do it so they don't get lost. So make sure we look at how we do those things. And let's talk about how we would do this. So this is actually a graph showing where the risk on and off gauge for many different markets right now. So this is as of February 23rd, so relatively recently, and it's showing the risk sentiment gauge. So right now, where are most of these risk factors for these markets? High or low? So risk sentiment means what? People think things are going well or going poorly. Yeah, they think it's going well, which is a good thing or a bad thing? When everybody thinks everything's going perfectly, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Bad, right. And then the US dollar is in the risk. The S&P 500 is how far in the risk. The NASDAQ 100 is how far in the risk. 10-year Treasury. The only thing that's looking good is oil. But even oil didn't have a crash here in the last couple of weeks before it came back again. So right now, there's many different, and then when we look at the risk factor just with the S&P 500, with the NASDAQ 100, if we broke that down into the dashboard, how many of those indicators are showing risk? A lot? Yeah, 95% of them are showing high risk, not just risk, but high risk. Make sense? Jeremy Grantham has an even scarier prediction than his crash call. The I manager says Goldilocks era of the past 25 years is ending. Labor shortages, inflation are among the persistent ills he sees. So what do you think? I mean, we mentioned a couple of them here, but why is why would you say that the Goldilocks? Why do you think he says the Goldilocks era of the past 25 years is ending? What's changed? I mean, what kind of wind was at the market sales over the last 25 years? Really, over the last 22 years, but what was in the low interest rates, right, Nick? That's one of them. So Jeremy Grantham got and also what has the government doing with government bonds? What have, with low interest rates, what have these companies, and we've talked about this many times before, what has made up a good over 50% of the growth in the marketplace? What has caused over 50% of the growth in the stock market? Profitability of the companies? No. What stock buybacks, right, Dean? That's right, Steve, buybacks. Jerry Grantham, and that's not happening anymore, is it? Jerry Grantham got the market's attention with the super bubble call in U.S. stocks both in 1999 and 2008. He now wants to get an even more alarming information out. One of his critics may find it harder to accept. The Goldilocks period of the last 25 years is ending, and the world needs to prepare for the future of inflation, slower growth, labor shortages, and the renowned value investor said renowned value investor. There's only a certain amount of cheap oil, cheap nickel, cheap copper, and we're beginning to hit some of these boundaries. Climate change is coming with heavy floods, serious droughts, and higher temperatures. Why does climate change hurt the market? Why does it hurt the market? Shortages, yep, absolutely. Why else? Why does it have to hurt the stock market? Guys, if all of our GDP is going into just rebuilding the same things over and over and over, does that give us growth for anything except the building industry? And farming, food prices are going to go up or go down. What's happening? Where is the breadbasket of the United States food system? Not the Midwest. Midwest grows corn. It does not grow food. The Midwest grows corn, not food, and corn is not being fed into us. It's going into ethanol and other things. California is. And California in a place where there's lots of rain or no rain? No rain. So the breadbasket of the country is in California in this basin where there's been no rain. Do you know that the land there has fallen 10 feet? It's gone down 10 feet. Why has it gone down 10 feet? gone down. Water table, yep. They've used up the water table. And is the West in the middle of the a wet time period or an extremely dry period? Yeah, so I mean, we got all. So there's so many things that are going to be a win not at the sales, but against the sales of the market. He described what he considers the fourth super bubble in U.S. history, reiterated the crash is imminent, advised exiting stock altogether, predicted a drop of almost 50%, and the S&P 500 with no amount of Federal Reserve intervention protected. Why could the Federal Reserve not protect it at this point? Because what have they been doing for the last 25 years? Do they have what's happening to their ability to do anything? They've used all the ammunition, haven't they? Yeah, there's no dry powder. Grantham contends that the excess in cost in the super bubble are symptomatic of humanity's tendency to live beyond its means. The demand for easy money that drove up asset prices in doing so exacerbated inequality that is now taking place in the form of economic stress and societal fragmentation. Short positions aren't usually a Grantham's script, he said, targeting the Russell 2000 because there's high density of flaky companies that aren't making any money in the NASDAQ because it contains too many unprofitable names. Not selling is always an option, Grantham said, but he pointed out that those who held through the past crashes endured agonizing wait to recoup their losses. 25 years in the case of the Dow Jones Industrials in 1929, 15 years in the NASDAQ for 2000, 5.5 years in 2007 for the S&P 500. And guys, have we seen that? And where are we right now? Do you think we are? Do you think this gray period is going to continue to go up and up and up? And just basically looking at this graph, what does it tell us? That we're near a purple zone or we're near the beginning of a gray zone? Yeah, sideways is coming soon. And what is the best place to be for sideways? Where is the best place for FIA? That's right, FIA. Do investors want wealth management advice from Google, Apple, or Facebook? So what do you think, guys? So this is changing the topics here. Where do people want to get their financial advice from? Google, Apple, Facebook, or from advisors? 69% of respondents said they would turn to Google, Apple, or Facebook for wealth and money management services if the companies offer them. Dude, what percentage? And do you think that Apple, Facebook, and Google aren't thinking about this right now? Do you really think they're not thinking about this right now? Not surprisingly, that number rose much higher among younger respondents, to 95%, Gen Z at 83% for millennials. But that still means that what? A high or low percentage of boomers would look to Facebook, Apple, and Google. I mean, think about this. How much information do boomers get from Facebook? A low or a high percentage of their news, of their information, of their advice, of their way too much. I would agree with that. Accenture report said that an emerging class of newly engaged investors have zeroed in on the likes of cryptocurrencies, environmental, social governance investing. Neither they nor their investors want general advice. For example, nearly 90% of mid-high net worth investors with 10 million or more in personal wealth said they got advice from the professionals the advice they got from the professionals are too generic. So when they're too generic, where do they go? When they think that their advisors are saying, hey, we got to be in this for the long term and downturns. When you speak the same way you've been speaking to them forever, where are they going? They're going to the internet. That's not a good thing, guys. So while clients of financial advisors seek perspective on risk management, asset protection, they also want products that give them protection against future risks or that meet specific targeted needs outside of their asset growth, such as banking and insurance help. The report found that 79% of investors, including 85% of generation and 91% of millennials, but again, that's still, if you look at these two and look at this number, still means a heck of a lot of boomers are expecting their advisor to give them a banking and insurance products. And not just banking and insurance products, guys. They want what? Do they just want you to manage their investments nowadays? Is that the only thing they want? Because where can they go to get their investments managed? You need to be doing non-financial if you want to stay in this. Accenture posits that advisors who don't change with the times watch the children of their existing older clients and take their inheritance money elsewhere after the parents pass away. One of the reports finds that 58% of respondents expect to inherit a significant amount of money, and they say that 26% of them plan on leaving their selecting a new advisor. 26%, does that seem high or low? All the other numbers we've seen is what? That kids generally do or do not keep. Because this is saying kids generally keep the same advisor. Is that what's really happening out there, guys? Not even. So this is from CNBC. Much is made about the massive generational wealth transfer from aging baby boomers to their millennial and Gen Z children. That's coming in over $30 trillion will exchange hands. 30 trillion will exchange hands. And CNBC says 2/3 of their heirs fire their parents. This is the number I've seen much more often than 26. Have you guys seen only the 3/4 of people keep their parents, or 2/3 of them leave their parents' advisor? Which numbers have you seen more often? Most leave or most stay? Most leave. And we had Tom, one of our top advisors, talk here about a month ago, and he said he had a huge lesson because he lost a $2 million account because the child left him, when his client died, left him and went to his current advisor. So how important is it that we're talking to our clients' children? It's critical. It's absolutely critical. And guys, how important is it that you're doing more than just managing money? Because how much does it cost for them to get advice from Facebook, Google, and who else did they say here? Facebook, Google, and who else? Apple. Nothing. Nothing. So guys, that's why you need to be doing the non-financial things. And should you only do it when you bring a client on, or should you be doing it every single year at your annual review? Every single year you need to reemphasize that you're doing way more than managing your money. And who is it important to involve in that? Spouse, yeah. But what are we talking about here? Kids, yeah. Kids. Spouse always, kids also though. Make sense? Super. So let's talk about what does the 21 accomplish? What are we trying to do when we do a 21-point checklist? This is changing gears a bit, but I'm going to tie it all back together here at the end. What are we trying to do with a 21-point checklist when we see you with a prospect? What is the number one thing? Leave their guy? Yeah, why? Why are they going to leave their guy? Steve, kill the advisor. How? Yep, you're right. How? Nick's got it. No trust. We break the trust. We break their trust, right? That's right. To get them to, John says, to get them to state that their advisor is not trustworthy. That's the perfect answer, John. Get them to state that their advisor is not trustworthy. When they do that, how many clients will move? How many tire kickers will move? How many plate lickers will move? How many people who love their advisor will move? 100% of them. So Warren Buffett says it takes 20 years to build a reputation, in 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. So we kind of do the juxtaposition of this, which is what? I don't care if they, do I really care? Am I afraid if they've worked with their advisor for 20 years? When I'm seeing a client, do you think I'm afraid that they worked with it? In fact, I love it. Why do I love it if they worked with their advisor for 20 years? Why do I love that? Oh, they're loyal. Absolutely. Tom? I love it because this. If some stranger screws us, are we really, we're disappointed, but are we really that disappointed if stranger screws us? Takes advantage of us? No. I'm like, well, people are people, aren't they? But when our loved ones screw us, how hard does that hurt? So the more that we have a connection to somebody, the more we're hurt when we find out that they'd be taking advantage of it. So why do I love somebody that has 20 years with their current advisor? because how angry do they get? They weren't being screwed for 1 year, they're being screwed for 20 years. Does that make sense? So that's the importance of a 21. Now, that's what we use a 21-point checklist for, but we also, on the other side, want to make sure that what? We're building trust. Now, do we ever ask them to trust us? Do we ever ask them to trust us? No. No. The great thing about the 21-point checklist is this, is when we point out all of the things the other guy has been omitting, has not been telling them, because if they had known those things, they would not have invested in the things the advisor recommended, and the advisor wouldn't have made that kind of money. If when we do that, what do they know about us? That we're going to do those same things to them? See, if the magician shows you the trick to cutting the lady in half, can he ever trick you with that again? So if we show them the 21 tricks that advisors play on their clients, can we ever play those tricks on them? No. So they think, well, you know what, maybe I can't 100% trust this new guy, but at least I know there are 21 things that he's not going to trick me on. And how much do we trust people who pull the curtain back on the industry? I don't care whether it's the building industry, or whether it's the insurance industry, or whether it's the legal industry. How much do we trust people to pull the curtain back on that industry? We just naturally trust them, and that's what we're doing here. But there's other ways to build trust as well. And again, we've talked about this several times before, but we can't emphasize this enough, because it has to do with how you deliver information. So, Jeff, you've talked about this before. How do we get people to trust us as an expert?
So I always tell people that, in a lot of ways, we have a lot in common with trial attorneys, in the sense that trial attorneys, they can't just stand up there and give a speech about why their client is innocent or guilty. They have to ask questions of witnesses, and the jury then decides, based on the answers to those questions, who to believe. And so sometimes trials can be super complex. So imagine that a plane crashes. The airline's going to say, well, it was the weather. Somebody else is going to say, no, it was the airline's fault. It was the plane, or it was the pilot. And so everybody's going to call a witness, and they're going to call an expert. And so one of the things that attorneys wondered was, well, how do juries know which expert to believe? Because everybody's going to call an expert. And so initially they did a little study, and they thought, well, it's probably, intuition would tell you they're going to believe the expert who has the most credentials. So you're going to want an expert that went to Harvard or who went to Yale. You're going to need somebody with a lot of substance, a big resume, basically. And when they did the study, what they found is, that's actually not true. It's counterintuitive. It has nothing to do with the credentials of the expert. Turns out that what it has to do with is who explains it in terms that are the most easy to understand. So if you have an expert that talks a lot of jargon and is difficult to understand, people don't believe them. If you have an expert, no matter where he comes from, no matter what his resume, who can put things simply that people get and they understand, that's the person they believe. So we always use we all know the example of the country lawyer who everybody believes him, and they don't believe the smart city slicker lawyer. It's because he puts things in terms that people relate to and understand. So you have to be relatable. You have to be able to explain things in a way that people understand, and that's why it doesn't do any good to just put an illustration in front of people and hope the illustration can explain it. If that worked, then American Equity or Silac or whoever created the illustration wouldn't need you. They just put it in front of people and expect the phone to start ringing. But we all know it doesn't work that way. You've got to be good at making things easy to understand.
Thanks, Jeff. That's so you guys. And what do we use in the 21-point checklist scripts? and in the FIA scripts to accomplish that? What do we use continually through the FIA and the 21-point checklist scripts to make that happen? Take the complicated and make it easy. What do we use? Dale's got it. What do we use, guys? Stories. We use stories. Now, we tell stories through open-ended questions, but open-ended questions will take people through the logic. Does logic win in sales? Does logic always win in sales? No. So we use open-ended questions to have the client tell us stories. For example, what story do we use for risk versus reward? If we just show them Morningstar, say, look, Morningstar's the expert, they're saying that your funds suck, is that going to work? Very good. Tom's got it. What story do we use to get them to understand that, anything below this line is bad and anything above this line is good? And charging me for anything below this line is incredibly stupid. Do we ever tell them that? No. We have them tell us. So what story do we use? What analogy do we use? So Tom's got it. We need more people than, Nick's got it. We need more than 2 people to know that. Guys, how easy should that be able to put you off the top of your head? Steve's got it. Okay. Paying cable TV? Yes. If you lived in an apartment that gave you 50 free channels of cable TV, 50 free channels of cable TV, and then the cable company calls you and said, we'd like to give you 25 channels and charge you $100 a month, what would you tell that cable company? Take a flying leap. I mean, how many people don't answer that question right? Does anybody ever get confused with that analogy? Yeah. So when they've agreed with that, and then you walk them through what that chart's telling us, how many people would say that the fact that their advisor is charging them a fee is a good thing? No one. So you've got to get good at telling stories. But how many advisors that aren't with 5Q rely on stories, and how many of them rely on logic and hypotheticals and charts and experts and all that kind of stuff? Stories sell. Make sense? So here's 6 other tips on how to get people to trust you. Number 1 is educate your clients first. If you educate your clients, it's going to increase your sales. And how do you educate? How do we educate people? How do we make sure they understand what we're teaching them? Somebody's already given us that answer. How do we make sure our clients understand what we're teaching them? Very good. Have them tell us. We don't tell them. We ask them, right, Kevin? They tell us. And do we ask them, Kevin, by saying, does that make sense? Do we ask them, do you see what I'm talking about here? Do you see how that works? Yeah, Jeff says it, yeah, open-ended questions, that's right. Open-ended questions, right, Kevin? So we have to educate people first by asking questions. And this is a side note of the 7 ways questions are more powerful than answers. Asking builds our knowledge. So by asking those questions, does that help us learn? By asking open-ended questions, does it help us learn about them, what they're thinking, whether they're on board or not, whether they agree with us? Yeah, so asking builds our knowledge of the person we're talking to. Asking teaches people about people. When I'm asking people open-ended questions, do I find out whether they're gregarious, whether they're very reticent, whether they have a good handle on the topic or don't have a handle on the topic? It teaches us about people too. Asking engages. So when you ask people yes/no questions, do they engage? No. But when you ask them open-ended questions and then aid them, get on their side, does that engage them? Talked about this many times before. Some of the best tapes I've listened to go maybe 3 hours long, and they're with a 70-year-old man or a 70-year-old woman or a 75-year-old couple. And when the advisor does it correctly, how do those people feel after being in the room with the advisor for 3 long hours? When it's done correctly, how do those people feel? 3 hours, man. Yes, everybody's saying it. Great, energized, invigorated, excited. That's what they feel. Why? Because for the first time, the advisor didn't go blah, 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 blah. Look how smart I am. Instead, let the client be smart. Let the client give the right answers and patted them on the back for that. So asking engages people. Asking guides people. Asking communicates value. When we have somebody that, when we go to a doctor and he spends 2 minutes with us and says, here's what we're going to do with you, boom, boom, boom. Or a doctor spends 20 minutes walking us through things, asking if we have any questions, helping us understand things, which doctor do we want to work with? The best doctor in the world who gives us no time, or a great doctor that gives us 20 minutes and answers all of our questions? Yeah, the second doctor. Asking communicates values. Asking sets an example. Asking develops relationships. Okay, so that's why we use motivational interviewing, open-ended questions. It's the most powerful way you can communicate. Second tip for building trust. Be proactive in your communication. Guys, how many of your clients should have had a call from you in the last month? How many of your clients should have gotten a call from you in the last month? All of them. Why? The marketplace, right, the market. That's right, Mark, the market. Turbulent times. Should you wait to see for them to call you? No, because when you wait, how many times have you taken a client from another advisor and the reason was that they say, he never called me, I always have to call him? Should we ever hide from difficult times, or should we be way ahead of difficult times? As soon as the market's turbulent, I'm calling, getting a hold of everybody. I'm sending out a newsletter. I'm sending out a letter. I'm letting people know, hey, I get it. Things are crazy right now. Let's talk about it. Does that make sense? Proactive. You have to be proactive. You can't be reactive. You can't say, well, anytime they call, I pick up the phone. No. You need to be calling them. Third tip, don't waste their time and vice versa. Don't let them waste your time. Okay? Especially with prospects. So is trying to do rapport the old way? I mean, we're in the process of buying a car now, and we went to 3 different car dealerships, and it just hit me in the face. What did all 3 car salesmen do? Yeah, it was painful. What did all 3 of them do? They tried to do rapport. How did they do? They schmoozed me. That's right. They tried to do rapport how? By being my best. Oh, your son goes to St. Thomas, mine does too. Or they do. And how did that make me feel? Not me, I'm in sales. How do you think it made my wife feel, who is the anti-salesperson? Did she know she was being schmoozed? Yes. And how does it feel when somebody does that? That's wasting my... Guys, I don't want you to be your best friend. I want you to get me my car for as quickly as possible in today's world and for a fair price. That's what I want. I don't want to be schmoozed. So don't waste their time. But the other thing is, if somebody's wasting our time, should we allow them to do that? No. So does anybody remember how we get somebody who's wasting our time back on track without offending them? Because should we ever look at our watch and say, we got to move on? Should I ever say that? Got to move on. We want to get all this information in the next hour. Never. So the tool we use to get people back on track is we let them go for about 3 minutes, and then what do? We let them talk for about 3 minutes, and we're like, oh my gosh. And 3 minutes is an eternity or a very short period of time we're talking when somebody's doing all the talking? 3 minutes is what? No, 3 minutes is a long, it feels forever. So let them talk for 3 minutes, and we have a clock behind them, right? So we can look at that. They talk for 3 minutes, and then what do? I look for them to say something. I look for them to say something that I can agree with, and for them to take a breath, and then I get in and I get on their side about it. I don't care if they're like talking about the weather. They're going on and on and on about how cold it is in Minnesota, and boy, we need spring, blah, 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 blah. And I'm looking, oh God, this is going to go on forever. So I'm looking at the clock and say, okay, about 3 minutes. And I wait for them to take a breath and say, wow, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, everybody feels exactly, you stated what everybody feels like in Minnesota more than I've ever heard anybody. You nailed it right on top, right on the nail. And, you know, that kind of reminds you, the next thing we're going to talk about is boom, and then I move on to the next thing. Do I say but, or do I say and that reminds me? I don't care if it reminds me or not. I just say, and that reminds me, and I move on to the next thing. Then if they get off track again, I let them go for 2 minutes. And then I wait for them to say something that I can agree with them on. And I say, and that kind of brings up the next thing. And do I really care if it brings up the next thing or not? No. I just move on. Because all they were looking for, people who go on and on and on, are either looking for a friend or want to be smart. And if they're looking for a friend, it doesn't matter. If they're looking for a friend or want to be smart, me telling them they're the smartest person in the room, does it scratch that itch? If they want a friend, does it scratch that itch? Telling them they're the smartest person in the room, does it scratch that itch? Yes. If they want to be smart, do I tell them the smartest person in the room? They're the smartest person in the room. Does that scratch the itch? Yes. So either way, I've scratched that itch, and then I just say, and that reminds me, and move on to the next topic. If you do that with 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, I've never had anybody in 22 years that did that didn't finally think, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and, I've talked enough here, I'm going to go ahead and let the advisor move through this information. Because they get it. They just wanted that scratch itch. You itched it 3 times, or you scratched that itch 3 times, and they're cool with it. But we don't want to go waste 20 minutes talking about things that aren't going to move us forward. 4th tip is show your expertise. How do we show our expertise? By being an expert on Morningstar, by being an expert on money managers. How do we show our expertise? Show it. Well, that's how I did mine, writing upside down. That's right, John. I learned to write upside down. I got so many people like, wow, you write better upside down than I write upside right. More people complimented on me on that than on my financial expertise. Because what did it tell them about me? I was new at this, or I've been doing this for years. That I was a consummate professional, or I was a newbie. Also, be in command of your topic. Make sense? And how did Jeff just tell us? Also, another way that we show our expertise. We take complicated things and what? Take complicated things and what? Make them simple. That's right. 5th tip. Keep commitments and no excuses. Should we ever make excuses, guys? Never, never, never. Here's one that they tell us. Don't trash your competitors. Do we agree or disagree with that when it comes with 5Q? Do we agree or disagree with this tip in 5Q? Everybody answer that question. I want everybody to answer that question. Oh, you guys are so smart. Yep, everybody's saying we agree with it. Very, very good. You're right. We agree with it, because do we ever say a bad word, syllable, or sound about about the other advisor? No. We ask questions and let the other guy do it. You know, it's the old adage, I can call my wife names, but we learned this, if anybody that watched the Academy Awards last night, I can call my wife names, but if anybody else calls my wife a name, guess what? We got what? Problems. So we never, if we attack their advisor, if we trash talk their advisor, their knee-jerk reaction is to protect them. So instead, we ask questions that let them attack their own advisor. Very good. You guys are smarter than the Dickens this morning. So those are things to do to increase your trustability. But I tell you what, if you do the 21-point checklist with a prospect correctly and let them be the smartest person in the room, they already trust you. All these other things are just icing on the cake. Make sense? Awesome. Now, here's one thing. When I'm talking to you on the phone or I'm talking to you at these coaching calls, I use a lot of closed-ended questions. The reason being is because, first of all, I'm moving through a lot of information. Second of all, it would be difficult for me to ask you a ton of open-ended questions when you guys not able to give me that feedback. So please, 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 I ask closed-ended questions to you, but you should never, ever, ever ask closed-ended questions to a client, because those answers are worthless. It's worthwhile becoming extremely proficient at those who, what, why, where, when, how questions, and then extremely proficient at getting on their side afterwards. And what's the best way to become proficient at those two things? It's the best tool we've given you. 15-minute drill. That's right, 15-minute drill. So I'm going to call the call right now. That's all the stuff I wanted to cover. But if you haven't done your 15-minute drill now or haven't done one in months, please, please, please take this extra time, pull up last week's tape breakdown, and do a 15-minute drill, okay? You guys have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you all next Monday. Thanks, everybody.